We're talking about reparations now in Congress,
Yes.
seriously having this debate. They were tearing each other apart yesterday. People were booing, blacks who were testifying and saying, "No, I think this is wrong, and I'm a Democrat," and they were being booed. I haven't seen this level of vitriol, and it gets worse every day. Last night we had somebody on CNN, a host, compare Donald Trump to Hitler. Why are we giving this man any platform? Now, this is not a guest. This is a host. We wouldn't do that to Hitler. Why are we doing it to him? You have Ocasio-Cortez comparing what we have happening on our border to a Nazi concentration camp. And people like Chuck Todd are being hammered because he said, that's ridiculous. And can you give me a framework of where you think we are in history? Have we been here before?
Yeah, well, I think that, this is a very strange kind of development that, you and I have talked about, kind of where the country is right now. I think that it would be good to mention that about 4 years ago, I wrote a piece that appeared on Fox Opinion called America's Coming Civil War. And it was about what I felt was, and I'm going to use a term that you'll recognize, Glenn, because it comes out of that period just before 1860, that there was an irrepressible conflict that was coming between those for whom the growth of government and of government control versus those for whom government control required extracting resources, including money, but also our own cultural identities, as a conflict that could be as serious as the one that broke out over slavery. And you were just talking very correctly about how what we saw there was that the impossibility of finding any kind of clear middle ground between those two sides. That piece went viral. There was a lot of criticism of it. What are you talking about, American Civil War? I wrote a follow-up piece after Barack Obama's inauguration, because I sensed that the Obama administration was, and his reelection in 2012 was really a turning point in this discussion and what was going to take place here. So with all of this, now everybody's talking about America's coming Civil War. Everybody is debating these kinds of questions about, are we really reaching an existential moment in terms of American identity? And I think what you see on the media, and particularly on the social media, suggests that I was right, that the Civil War may not come in terms of actual violence. We're not going to be refighting the Battle of Gettysburg. But I think we're moving very quickly into a space where it's going to be harder and harder to find sensible compromise, even on fundamental kinds of issues, which in the past would have been considered, beyond politics.
Because we're not talking about, but we're not really talking about those issues. We're talking about reparations. How does in all of the problems that we face, the politicians always pick the ones that are absolutely the most divisive, and with an exception of, I think, abortion, the least consequential at this point.
No, exactly, and reparations is a classic example, because it's never going to become reality. That this is simply done by the Democrats as a way to try and increase the African American vote, which they sense disaster looming ahead in the 2020 election. And so the scramble is on.
You really believe you actually really believe that they're headed for a disaster?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Oh, I'm glad
and I
to
think
hear that.
And I think that the disaster is reflected both in the pathetic field of candidates that have come forward here, but also the kinds of issues that they're reduced to addressing and putting out there in the hopes that they'll be able to collect votes. Of course, what will happen is when Trump is reelected, there'll be all kinds of claims that the election was stolen yet again. This is also part of the Democrat playing book now, is that any election that doesn't return a Democrat, and particularly a liberal Democrat, is illegitimate has been manipulated either by voter suppression or by collusion with foreign governments or some other kind of underhanded means. This, too, works to undermine people's confidence in our institutions on both sides of the aisle, Glenn. I mean, this is the other point, too, is that the increase, the hyper exaggerated rhetoric that we're getting out of the left also convinces those on the right that there is no grounds for compromise. People are out of control, and that if they were somehow to gain power, that we would be staring a proto-totalitarian state in the face. The equivalent of, Mao's Cultural Revolution is on the way. And whether that's true or not, the degree to which the excessive rhetoric on the part of the left requires a equally exaggerated response from many of the voices on the right is all pointing us towards the idea that this is we're in dangerous territory.